The dueling class used training sabers, but the human girl brought her uncle's ancient longsword. The academy floated in slow orbit around a pale blue moon. It was wide and old, built in layers from many eras. Long halls curved like rivers of metal. Windows showed stars that never blinked. Students from many worlds moved through the halls, each wearing the colors of their home groups. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4. Some glided with soft hums. The academy taught strategy, science, and combat. It claimed to make warriors safe, fair, and modern. The dueling class met in a round arena with high walls and clear shields. The floor could change shape, but today it was flat and clean. Lines of light marked safe zones. Racks along the wall held training sabers. They glowed in soft colors and cut nothing. Everyone knew the rules. No real blades. No lasting harm. Learn form, learn balance, learn control. The instructor arrived early. He was tall and thin, with calm eyes and a voice trained to carry. He checked the systems and the shields. He liked order. He believed safety made strong fighters. Students came in groups, talking and laughing. Some showed off spins with their sabers. Others stretched and tested footwork. A few watched from the seats above, eager for clean matches and bright flashes. Then the door opened again. A human girl stepped inside alone. She was not late by much, but the room noticed. Humans were still new here. Most people had seen them only in lessons and brief drills. This girl wore simple clothes, dark and plain. Her hair was tied back. Her face showed no fear and no smile. She carried a long case in both hands. It looked old, real old. Brown leather with metal corners worn smooth. The room grew quiet. Someone laughed once, then stopped. The instructor raised a hand. He asked her name and home group. She answered in a calm voice. It was clear and steady. She said she was here for the dueling class. The instructor looked at the case. He asked what it held. She said it was a sword. More laughter followed. Training sabers hung on the wall. Everyone knew the rules. The instructor sighed and told her to choose a saber. He said real weapons were not allowed. She did not argue. She placed the case on the floor and opened it. The sound was soft, but it cut the air. Inside lay a long sword of dull silver. It had a straight blade and a simple guard. No lights, no hum, just metal. The handle was wrapped in dark leather, worn by many hands. It did not shine, but it felt heavy even at a distance. The laughter died. The instructor frowned. He stepped closer. He asked if it was a replica. He waved a scanner over it. The scanner flashed and failed. It showed warnings and unknown markers. The instructor felt a chill. He asked her to close the case. She said the sword belonged to her uncle. She said it was old, but it still worked. She said she trained with it since she was young. The instructor told her again that real blades were not allowed. He reached for the case. She stepped back. She did not raise the sword. She did not threaten. She only said she had signed the class forms, and they did not forbid her weapon by name. She asked for a test duel, not a match. She said she would follow every safety rule she could. The instructor hesitated. Students leaned forward. Cameras adjusted. The system still failed to read the sword. The rules were old and written for modern tools. The instructor made a choice he would think about for years. He allowed one controlled duel. A volunteer stepped forward. He was confident and quick, from a world that prized speed. He chose a blue saber and bowed with a grin. He thought this would be easy. The human girl took the sword from the case. She held it with care. She bowed back, lower and slower. The sword did not glow. It waited. The shields rose. The arena lights dimmed. The duel began. The volunteer moved first. He danced in, saber flashing. He aimed for clean taps, points that would end the bout fast. The human girl did not rush. She watched. Her feet moved in small steps. The sword stayed close to her body. The crowd whispered. They expected her to lose. The volunteer struck again, faster. The saber slid toward her shoulder. She turned her blade and met it. There was a sharp sound. Not a buzz, not a hiss, a crack. The saber flickered. The volunteer blinked and pulled back. He attacked again. The human girl stepped in. Her sword moved once, straight and clean. The saber met steel and went dark. It fell to the floor in two dead halves. Silence spread across the arena. The volunteer stared at his hands. He had never seen a saber fail like that. The instructor shouted to stop the duel. He reached for the controls. Nothing happened. The system had locked itself. It could not read the blade, so it could not judge the match. Safety rules froze. The human girl lowered her sword. She did not chase. She waited. The instructor called for calm. He told the volunteer to step back. The volunteer did so, shaken but unharmed. The shields stayed up. The instructor asked the human girl to explain. She said her uncle taught her that weight teaches truth. She said a blade that can cut forces the mind to slow down. She said she learned control because mistakes cost real pain. Some students felt fear. Some felt anger. Ow! Others felt a strange respect. The instructor finally ended the lock with a manual override.
The shields dropped. Medics checked the volunteer.
He was fine, but his pride was hurt. The class ended early. News spread fast. By the next cycle, the Academy Council called a review. They gathered in a wide chamber with floating screens. The instructor stood before them. The human girl stood beside him, hands empty now. The council asked hard questions. Why allow a real weapon? Why break tradition? Why risk lives? A human officer arrived as witness. He wore simple marks of rank. His face showed years of calm service. He spoke without anger. He said humans grew with metal and fire. He said training tools were useful, but they hid truth. He said his people learned early that safety and danger were partners, not enemies, the council argued. Some feared humans. Some mocked old tools. Some worried about image and control. Outside the chamber, students gathered. They watched feeds and shared clips. The broken saber replayed again and again. The human girl waited in silence. At last, the council made a temporary choice. They would allow one public test. Not a duel, but a display. If the human method showed control and respect, they would consider rule changes. If not, real blades would be banned by name. The human girl accepted. That night, she returned to her quarters. She opened the case again. She cleaned the blade with slow care. She remembered her uncle's voice, rough and kind, telling her to stand straight and breathe. Far from the academy, unknown eyes watched the footage. They slowed it down. They marked the timing. They noted the weight and the angle. Interest grew. The human girl closed the case and rested. Tomorrow would be harder. The easy shock was over. Now the galaxy would ask what humans truly brought with them, and the answer would not glow or hum. It would be cold, honest steel. The next morning, the academy arena was full. Students crowded the stands, and others hovered outside on viewing platforms. They wanted to see the human girl again. Rumors had spread about her sword, about the broken saber, about her calm stance. Everyone wondered if she had only luck or skill. Some felt nervous. Some wanted to see her fail. A few wanted to learn from her. The human girl walked in quietly. She carried the long sword in its case, but this time she held it with ease. Her eyes scanned the arena. She noticed the lines of light, the shields, the cameras. Nothing surprised her. She had trained for years for moments like this. Her opponent arrived. He was tall and covered in light armor from a faraway world. His skin shimmered in soft colors. His eyes glinted with curiosity and challenge. He wielded a blue saber, the same as the one broken yesterday, and he moved with fast precision. The crowd cheered for him. They expected speed and flash. They expected a quick demonstration of human weakness. The instructor stepped forward. He reminded the audience of the rules. This was a demonstration, not a deadly duel. He asked the human girl to confirm she understood. She nodded. Her face showed no fear, only focus. She opened the case and lifted the longsword. The weight was perfect for her. The handle fit her grip, as if made for her hands alone. The duel began slowly. The opponent rushed first, moving in a blur of saber light. He attacked with spinning strikes and quick jabs. The human girl did not move fast. She stepped lightly, keeping her blade close. She watched, she measured, she waited. Each movement was precise, small, and deliberate. The crowd murmured. Her calm pace seemed strange. It looked weak compared to the flashing saber, but the human girl did not care about appearances. She focused on timing. A strike came at her shoulder. She turned the sword just enough to meet it. The saber bounced off with a high-pitched ring. The opponent struck again, faster, harder, spinning around her. Each strike she met with patience, not haste. Each block took energy, but she did not tire. Her stance was strong, her mind steady. The opponent grew frustrated. He increased his speed. The crowd leaned forward. Many believed the human would break, but she did not. She waited. Then, in one moment, she moved. It was not a rush, not a spin, not a flash. It was simple. She stepped in, shifted her weight, and swung the long sword straight. The saber struck her blade and bent slightly under the force. The opponent staggered back, surprised by the power. The saber sparked and went dark. The lights flickered. Silence spread across the arena. The crowd gasped. Some students whispered. Others stared in awe. The instructor moved forward slowly. He checked the opponent. He was unharmed, but wide-eyed with shock. The human girl lowered her sword and waited. The instructor called. The duel paused. He asked if anyone wanted to continue. The opponent stepped back, unsure. The human girl did not press. She had made her point. She had shown that strength and control could match speed and flash. The human officer who had watched the previous day stepped closer. He spoke quietly to the instructor. He explained that humans trained with weight and balance, with real lessons from real weapons. He said it was not magic. It was discipline. Pain and effort shaped their technique. Some students started to understand. They whispered to each other about the human girl's calm focus, about the sword, about her control. Others were afraid. They had never seen a human fight this way. They had not realized humans could bring ancient skill into a modern academy and still stand unbroken. The instructor allowed the duel to end. He praised both fighters. He reminded everyone that safety and learning were important. He warned students not to underestimate the human girl or her sword. The human officer nodded, satisfied. The human girl collected her longsword and returned it to its case. Later in the quiet halls, the human girl walked alone. She thought about her uncle's words. He had said that weapons were not just tools, they were teachers. Every swing, every stance, every block held lessons. The human girl had listened, and today the lessons had been shown to the galaxy. In another place, far from the academy, eyes watched the duel recordings. Analysts slowed every movement. They noted the timing, the footwork, the subtle shifts of weight. They compared it with known combat techniques. They realized that humans fought differently. They were not the fastest or the flashiest. They were precise, patient, and strong. They were survivors. The human girl returned to her quarters. She opened the case and cleaned the blade carefully. She looked at the long steel and remembered the stories of battles long past, of wars her uncle had fought, of lessons he had given before he was gone. She rested the sword on her lap and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new eyes from the galaxy would watch. But for now she had shown that humans could face the impossible and stand without fear. The council chamber was vast and cold. It hovered high above the main academy, with walls of transparent material showing stars and distant planets. Inside, a long table stretched across the floor. Members from different species sat around it, each with signs of rank and authority. Screens floated near their seats, showing the duel from the arena. Every motion, every strike, every moment of the human girl's calm stance played in endless loops. The instructor stood at the edge, presenting the events. He spoke in measured tones, explaining the duel, the sword, and the control the girl had shown. He described how the saber had failed under her skill and why the human method was different from all others. He noted the respect she had shown for safety and how the duel had remained under control despite breaking the usual rules. Some council members whispered to each other. Some were skeptical, some frowned. A few leaned forward, curious. One member, a being with many eyes and thin limbs, asked sharply why the academy would allow a human to bring a real weapon into a class. Another member, a large creature with armor-like skin, said it was dangerous. Someone else argued that humans could be unpredictable and should not be trusted with weapons. The human girl stood quietly beside the instructor. She held her case. She did not speak. Oh, she did not fidget. Her calm presence made some of the council members uneasy. It was unusual to see a student face such scrutiny without fear. Then the human officer arrived. He was not part of the council, but he had authority. His uniform was simple, but it carried history. He stepped forward and addressed the chamber. His voice was calm but firm.
He said humans trained differently. He said weight and effort were tools to teach control and patience.
He explained that a weapon was not just an object. It carried lessons, discipline, and history. The human officer said that the girl's skill was not luck. It was learned through years of practice and careful guidance. He told stories of how humans prepared for battles long before technology existed, and how they survived through strategy, discipline, and endurance. Some council members listened with interest. Others were still doubtful. They asked the human officer for proof, for examples. He spoke of humans training in real forests, on mountains, and in oceans. He described how each mistake carried consequences, how each lesson was remembered. He explained that humans did not just rely on speed or strength. They relied on balance, judgment, and timing. The council debated. Arguments became heated. Some wanted the girl removed from the academy. Others wanted her praised for bravery. Some worried about breaking tradition. Others saw potential to learn. The debate lasted hours. Outside, students watched feeds and discussed what they saw. Many were impressed. Some were afraid. Some could not understand the human girl at all. Finally, the council decided they would allow a public demonstration, not a duel, not a fight to the death, but a display of skill. The demonstration would show whether the human methods were safe and whether her skill could be respected. If successful, humans would be allowed to continue using their traditional weapons. If not, strict bans would follow. The human girl nodded. She accepted the challenge without hesitation. She returned to her quarters. She cleaned her sword carefully. Each stroke polished the metal. Each movement reminded her of her uncle's lessons. She practiced alone, focusing on balance, timing, and posture. She trained in silence, thinking about every possible move and counter. The instructor visited her later. He offered advice, but not on technique. He spoke about calmness, awareness, and reading opponents. The human girl listened. She already knew. Today our Gravelin passes. She only absorbed his words to strengthen what she had learned. Meanwhile, the footage of her duels spread. Across the galaxy, beings watched and took notes. Some were scholars. Some were military leaders. Some were curious spectators. They noted the human's discipline and control. They noted that she had won without killing, without cheating, without fear. By evening, the academy settled into quiet. The human girl placed her sword back in the case. She sat by the window, looking at the stars. She imagined battles long ago, lessons from her uncle, and moments when humans had survived against odds no one remembered. She knew tomorrow would bring eyes that did not care about dueling rules. They would watch for skill, for courage, for the measure of humanity. Far from the academy, observers paused the footage again. They replayed it slowly. They marked angles, movements, timings, and shifts of weight. Some exchanged silent signals. They knew that humans were something different, something to be studied, respected, and maybe feared. The human girl closed her eyes. She rested. She knew her demonstration would not be about victory or defeat. It would be about showing the truth of human discipline and strength. She had carried her uncle's lessons this far. She would carry them further tomorrow. The galaxy would watch, and she would stand ready. The day of the public demonstration arrived. The academy changed the arena for the event. The floor widened, and thick shields rose higher than before. Medical teams waited behind the walls. Instructors stood at every control panel. The council watched from above. Many students filled the seats, and more watched through live feeds from across the station. The human girl entered when her name was called. She walked slowly, carrying the case in both hands. She did not look at the crowd. She focused on the arena floor and the lines of light. When she reached the center, she placed the case down and opened it. The longsword rested inside, quiet and heavy. The instructor explained the rules again. This was a test of control and discipline. No killing, no reckless strikes. The goal was to show skill and restraint. The human girl nodded. She lifted the sword and took her stance. The first challenger stepped forward. He was short and broad, with strong legs built for sudden movement. He carried a curved training blade that hummed softly. He bowed with confidence. The duel began. He attacked fast, rushing in with sharp angles. The human girl moved back, keeping distance. She blocked once, twice, each time letting the blade absorb the force. She did not counter. She watched his breathing and his feet. When he overreached, she tapped his blade aside and stepped past him. The move was gentle and clean. The instructor ended the bout. The challenger nodded in respect. The second challenger was taller and slower but strong. He used a heavy staff weapon. The strikes came down with force. The human girl braced herself. She blocked, the sound of wood against steel echoing through the arena. The weight tested her arms. Sweat formed on her brow. She adjusted her stance, lowered her center, and waited. When the staff came again, she stepped inside the arc and used the flat of her blade to redirect it. The challenger stumbled. The bout ended. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The human girl did not rush. She did not show off. She adapted. The third challenger entered. This one wore light armor and carried twin sabers. Speed was his strength. He circled her, blades flashing. The arena lights reflected off the steel of her sword. He attacked in bursts, aiming to overwhelm her. She retreated, blocking and turning, conserving energy. One saber grazed her sleeve. The crowd gasped. She did not flinch. She waited. When the sabers crossed, she stepped forward and pressed down with the weight of her blade. One saber sparked and failed. The other slid away. She stopped short of a strike and stepped back. The challenger froze, then lowered his weapons. The bout ended. Applause rose, mixed with nervous silence. Some students cheered. Others watched with wide eyes. The instructor consulted the council. They nodded. One more challenger would test endurance. The final challenger stepped onto the arena floor. He was taller than the others and moved with slow confidence. His armor was dense. His weapon was a powered polearm that glowed at the edges. He bowed slightly and took position. The duel began. He did not rush. He advanced step by step, forcing the human girl back. Each strike shook the floor. She blocked, but the force pushed her arms wide. Her breathing grew heavier. She adjusted her grip. She stepped to the side, trying to find an opening. The challenger turned smoothly and pressed forward. Minutes passed. The crowd grew quiet. This was no quick display. This was work. The human girl's arms burned. Her legs ached. The sword felt heavier with each block. She remembered her uncle's words about choosing moments. She remembered standing in rain, repeating the same movement until her muscles learned without thought. The challenger struck low, then high. She blocked high and felt the shock run through her shoulders. She stumbled back. The edge of the arena loomed behind her. The challenger pressed in. For a moment it looked like the human girl would fall. The crowd held its breath. The council leaned forward. Medics tensed. She changed her stance. She lowered the blade and stepped toward the challenger instead of away. She used the ground, the angle, the weight of the sword. The next strike met steel and slid aside. She turned her wrist and let the blade guide her motion. The challenger's weapon was forced wide. She stepped in close. With a controlled movement, she hooked the guard of her sword against the shaft of the polearm and twisted. The weapon slipped from the challenger's hands and hit the floor. Silence fell. The human girl froze, blade held still. She did not strike. She did not raise the sword. She waited. The instructor stepped forward and ended the bout. The challenger bowed deeply. He showed no anger, only respect. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some stood in shock. Others watched quietly, understanding that they had seen something rare. The human girl stepped back and lowered her sword. Her arms shook now that the fight was over. She breathed slowly and placed the blade back into its case. The council spoke among themselves. Faces showed thought and concern. This was not a trick or a single moment of luck. This was discipline under pressure. As the arena emptied, the human girl left quietly. She did not stay for praise. She did not seek attention. She walked back to her quarters with steady steps. Far away, unseen watchers recorded every second. They marked the final exchange again and again. They noted how she chose restraint over force, timing over speed. The demonstration was over, but the test was not finished. What she had shown would change rules, fears, and plans. The galaxy was paying attention now, and attention could bring danger. The human girl closed her door and sat down. Her hands trembled as the weight of the day settled in. She rested the case beside her and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, the consequences would arrive. The Academy did not sleep after the demonstration. Messages moved through its systems without pause. Council members argued in private channels. Instructors reviewed footage again and again. Students whispered in corridors, replaying the final moment when the human girl had disarmed the strongest challenger without striking him down. The human girl stayed inside her quarters. Her body ached from the effort. Her arms felt heavy, and her hands still shook at times. She cleaned the longsword slowly, wiping away marks left by the polearm. Each movement calmed her breathing. She thought of her uncle and the way he taught her to finish every fight with care, no matter how tired she was. A message arrived requesting her presence, not from the council, from the Academy security office. She closed the case and carried it with her. The halls felt different now. Eyes followed her. Some students stepped aside with respect. Others looked away in fear. A few tried to speak, but she kept walking. She had learned long ago not to let noise distract her. Inside the security chamber, several officials waited. Their faces were serious. A large screen showed paused images from the demonstration. The final exchange played silently behind them. One official spoke first. He said the Academy had received outside signals during the event. Unknown groups had been watching. They had sent inquiries, not polite ones. They wanted information about the human weapon and the training behind it. The human girl listened without interrupting. She already sensed this would happen. Another official said some of those groups were not scholars or teachers. They were fighters. They saw opportunity. The room felt colder. The human officer arrived moments later. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He stood beside the girl, not in front of her. He spoke clearly. He said humans had faced attention like this before. Curiosity often came with danger. He said hiding would only make others more suspicious. The officials asked the human girl if she understood the risk. She answered simply. She said she had trained for risk her whole life. She said her uncle taught her that skill was not meant to be hidden when it could protect others. The council met again, that same cycle. This time, the debate was shorter. They could not deny what they had seen. The human girl had shown restraint, control, and respect for life. She had followed the spirit of safety even when using a real blade. The council voted to allow humans to continue using traditional weapons under strict rules. They also agreed to expand combat training to include non-energy methods for those willing to learn. The decision was broadcast across the Academy. Reactions were mixed. Some celebrated. Some feared change. Some worried this would attract trouble. They were right. Within days, a visiting group arrived. They claimed to be observers interested in cultural exchange. Their words were polite, but their movements were sharp. Their eyes followed the human girl wherever she went. The instructor noticed first. He warned the human officer. The officer nodded and increased security. The visiting group requested a private demonstration. They wanted to see the sword again. The council hesitated but allowed a supervised meeting. The meeting took place in a smaller training hall. Shields were active. Guards waited nearby. The human girl stood in the center, sword in hand. One visitor stepped forward. He carried an advanced weapon with shifting edges and humming power. He smiled and praised her skill. Then he asked her to show the limits of human technique. She did not like the tone, but she agreed to a controlled exchange. The duel began fast, faster than the demonstration. The visitor attacked with intent, not curiosity. The strikes were sharp and meant to test weakness. The human girl blocked and moved, her body tired but trained. The visitor pressed harder. His weapon scraped her blade, sending sparks across the floor. The guards tensed. The human officer watched closely. Then the visitor changed tactics. He aimed for her legs, then her hands. The human girl stumbled once. Pain shot through her arm. The crowd gasped. She did not fall. She remembered her uncle's last lesson. When strength fades, use mind. She slowed her breathing. She stopped retreating. She stepped inside the visitor's reach and let his weapon slide past. She turned, twisted, and struck the ground beside his foot. The force cracked the floor. The visitor froze. She raised her sword, then stopped it an inch from his neck. Silence filled the hall. The visitor slowly lowered his weapon. His smile was gone. The guards moved in. The duel ended. The council immediately ended the visit. The group was escorted off the station under watch. Warnings were sent across secure channels. That night, the human girl sat alone again. Her arm throbbed. She wrapped it carefully. She felt tired in a way that reached deeper than muscle. She wondered if this was the price of being seen. The human officer visited her quietly. He thanked her. He said she had protected more than herself. She had shown the galaxy that humans could be dangerous, but chose not to be. She nodded, but said little. Far away, those who had watched understood the message. Humans were not reckless fighters. They were disciplined survivors who knew when to stop. The academy prepared new rules and new training paths. Students signed up in secret and in public. But the attention did not fade. The human girl looked at the stars outside her window. She knew the next challenge would not come as a test or a request. It would come as a threat. She rested her hand on the case. Steel was ready. So was she. Morning light filled the academy as the human girl prepared for the day. The halls were quiet. Students moved with care, still speaking softly about the recent demonstrations. Council members were meeting, instructors were planning, and security teams were alert. Across the station, signals indicated that unknown observers continued to watch. The human girl carried her longsword in its case. She moved with calm, steady steps. Every eye that saw her noticed how composed she was. She did not speak. She did not hurry. She only walked toward the training hall where the final review would take place. The hall was large, but smaller than the arena. Shields were raised. Cameras hovered silently. Medics stood ready. The council sat above in observation boxes. A few students were allowed to watch. The purpose of this day was not a duel, but to show the value of human combat discipline to those who might not understand. She opened the case. The long sword gleamed faintly in the light. She lifted it and adjusted her stance. Her breathing was controlled, her gaze steady. A new set of challengers arrived, sent by the council for testing purposes. Each carried different weapons, from heavy-bladed staffs to energy sabers. Their skills were varied, but their purpose was the same: to test her methods and show the value of human training. The first challenger approached with caution. His weapon was light and fast. He attacked with precision. The human girl blocked calmly. She moved, adapted, and responded to every strike. She did not rush. She did not show off. Her calm, steady technique frustrated the challenger. Each attempt to overpower her was met with careful defense. The bout ended with the challenger bowing in respect. The second opponent was heavier, slower, but more powerful. Each strike tested her strength. She met each blow with effort, using her body and sword as one. Pain came, fatigue followed, but she never faltered. She redirected attacks, absorbed force, and countered only when the moment was right. Her movements were not fast but deliberate. When she disarmed the second challenger without harming him, the hall was silent with awe. The third challenger was the most skilled so far. He carried twin energy blades, moving faster than the eye could follow. The human girl was pushed back. She stumbled once. The council members leaned forward. Medics tensed. Students held their breath. She remembered her uncle's words: observe, wait, and act only when necessary. She shifted her stance, used her weight and the reach of her sword. One blade was deflected, the other guided away. She did not strike. She let the opponent realize she had control. The challenger lowered his weapons and bowed. The final challenge approached. It was not about skill alone, but endurance. The opponent was large, armored, and confident. Each strike carried weight and intent. The human girl blocked, moved, adjusted. Her arms burned, her legs ached. She could feel fatigue pressing in. The opponent's strikes were forceful, each one meant to push her to the limit. The hall seemed to hold its breath. She remembered the lessons passed down by her uncle. Every motion had purpose. Every stance had meaning. Even when tired, even when the opponent pressed harder, she could still act with control. She slowed her breathing. She waited. She observed openings in balance and footwork. Then she acted. She redirected a strike, stepped inside, twisted, and used the force of her own blade against the polearm of the challenger. The weapon slipped from his hands. She held her sword steady, stopping just inches from his face. Silence filled the hall. No one moved. The council stared. Students gasped. The human girl stepped back. She did not strike further. She did not boast. She only lowered her sword and returned it to its case. The council members nodded among themselves. The demonstration was complete. The human girl had proven that human methods were disciplined, controlled, and effective. She had shown that humans could survive, adapt, and teach lessons that technology alone could not replace. Outside the hall, unseen observers received reports. They paused footage, analyzed movements, and noted timing, balance, and restraint. Humans were not reckless. They were survivors. The academy changed its rules. New training programs were planned. Students signed up to learn methods not only of speed and strength, but of patience and judgment. The human girl had shown the value of history and practice. The human officer approached her quietly. He praised her restraint and control. He said she had not only defended herself but had set an example for everyone. The human girl nodded. She knew attention would continue to follow. Unknown groups would watch. Challenges would come. But she had learned that discipline, patience, and careful action were stronger than speed or flashy technique. She carried her sword to her quarters. She opened the case, cleaned the blade, and rested. Her body ached, but her mind was calm. She looked out at the stars.